The room was still, eerily still. Cameras clicked, but no one spoke. In Washington, D.C., the U.S. Supreme Court had just handed down a ruling that would ignite shockwaves around the world. They voted to uphold a motion blocking thousands of African and Middle Eastern refugees from gaining asylum, branding them unintegrated threats. The courtroom pulsed with tension, but no one expected what came next. Just 2 hours later, a foreign plane landed. Out stepped Captain Ibrahim Traore, president of Burkina Faso. No guards, no entourage, just a simple letter clutched in his hand. He hadn't come to fight. He had come to speak. And what he said would shake the very foundations of the world's highest court. Across social media, confusion exploded. Why was Traore walking into the U.S. Supreme Court? What did Africa have to do with this ruling? What they didn't know, yet was that buried beneath the headlines was a secret. One of the deported men was part of a classified U.S. Burkina Faso military operation. 2 days earlier, an 8-year-old boy had been found crying outside a detention center in Texas. No name, no papers, just 3 whispered words. From Ouagadougou, Papa Soldier. The boy's father had been a Burkinabe interpreter. He risked his life in a 2023 joint anti-terror mission with U.S. forces. He was promised asylum, but he was deported without warning, without trace. When this reached Traore's desk, he said nothing for 11 seconds. Then he spoke 4 words that would reverberate across the globe. "This child is mine." Reporters laughed. At first, they thought it was metaphor, but to Traore it wasn't. Every abandoned child, every betrayed ally, every soul cast aside by the powerful, he saw them as his responsibility. And now, he was about to walk into the Supreme Court and tell 9 judges what they had done. "Mr. President," whispered U.S. official nervously, "with all due respect, this is highly irregular." But Traore was already walking forward, wearing no uniform, no rank, just a plain dark tunic stitched with a Burkinabe crest over his heart. No lawyers, no permission, just truth. Outside, a crowd had gathered: African students, war veterans, immigrant families, civil rights icons. They held signs: "Let them stay. Africa remembers. This is about humanity." Inside, a justice raised an eyebrow. "This court doesn't allow unscheduled testimony," he said coldly. Traore didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. But what he said stopped the air itself. "You may not allow testimony, but you allowed silence to become law, and I will not be silent." The room froze. The cameras had already begun rolling, and what followed would change the world's view on loyalty, asylum, and forgotten promises. He approached the bench. 3 months ago, a Burkinabe interpreter risked everything to help your soldiers. He translated your orders. He protected your lives. He helped dismantle a terrorist cell. He held up a crumpled document, a copy of the original military agreement. He was promised asylum. He waited, and you deported him like trash. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Then Traore raised something else, a tiny, tattered sleeve. This belonged to his son, the last thing he held before U.S. agents took him away. He has no mother. His father has vanished. Now, at night, he speaks to the walls. He calls them Papa. One female justice covered her mouth. Traore looked at each justice, one by one. If that child had been born in Texas instead of Ouagadougou, would you care more? Outside, a leaked video exploded across social media. In it, U.S. border agents mocked a captured interpreter, called him African rat, called his son a future terrorist. One voice said, "Ship them back or bury them in the desert." Inside, Traore's voice cracked. "My people are not dogs. My people have names. My people saved your lives, while your own citizens hid behind armored drones." Then he turned to the cameras. "This isn't just about Burkina Faso. It's about Sudan, Syria, Palestine, Colombia. Refugees used, then discarded." A young black law clerk wiped away tears. Across Africa, public squares filled. In Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Senegal, elders watched in silence. One woman whispered, He speaks for all our children in a New Jersey foster home. The interpreter's son watched too. He didn't blink. He just whispered, "Papa?" Back in court, the justices, clearly shaken, requested a recess, but Traore remained standing. "I'll wait," like your interpreters waited, in the heat, in the sand, with guns aimed at their backs and hope in their hearts. Inside chambers, the justices argued. One, Justice Richards, pounded the table. "He's not American. He has no standing." But Justice Elena Ferris whispered, "Maybe not standing, but he has the world's heart." Outside, a former immigration officer wept on camera. "I deported a child once. I live with that every day." Inside, Traore finally sat. He hadn't eaten, hadn't drunk a drop of water. "Offer refreshment?" He replied, "No, thank you. I'm just tired of fighting wars that shouldn't exist." He opened a folder. Inside were 60 letters, each from a deported African military aide. Each had served the U.S. Each ended with the same final line: "Tell my children I serve with honor, even if I die forgotten." Then Traore looked up and asked a question that would haunt the court. When did honoring a promise become negotiable? The chamber was still, too still. Captain Ibrahim Traore stood in front of the bench, the weight of silence thicker than the law itself. And then he lifted something small but devastating, a photograph. It wasn't gruesome. It wasn't political. Just a blurry image of a young African boy wrapped in a crinkled silver thermal blanket. His eyes were red from crying. His lips cracked from dehydration. In his hands, he held a drawing, a stick figure in a military uniform, scrawled beneath in jagged handwriting, "Papa, protect." "This child is not a criminal," Traore said. "He is the son of a man who served your flag, who saved your soldiers, who intercepted 3 suicide bombings, who translated coordinates while bullets flew overhead." A long silence followed. "Your system didn't just support the father," Traore continued, his voice quiet but sharp. "It orphaned the son." That image, the boy in his drawing, hit front pages within hours. The New York Times, Al Jazeera, Le Monde, social media erupted. Hashtag who is his father? Hashtag Traore speaks. Hashtag forgotten by freedom. Millions cried. Millions reposted. And in a quiet New Jersey foster home, that same little boy stared wide-eyed at the screen. He whispered just 2 words. "That's him." The man Papa said would never let go. Back in court, Traore opened a sealed envelope. Its seal broken just 48 hours earlier. "This is Operation Fire Dust," he said calmly. "A joint mission between your military, my intelligence officers, and one interpreter who never made a home." He laid the file gently before the justices. "Your general signed this. Your mission won because of him. His name was Falcon Echo in your files. And now he's gone without warning, without justice. And his son, the boy you saw, is being raised in a system that treats dogs better than those who save American lives." One of the judges, old and stoic, stood and finally spoke. "What exactly are you asking of this court, Mr. Traore?" Traore didn't flinch. "I'm not asking," he said. "I'm reminding that justice is not stamped on paper. It lives or dies in people." Outside, the movement was swelling. From Accra to Atlanta, from Nairobi to Brooklyn, people lit candles. Churches and mosques read aloud the names of deported interpreters. Some of those names were already confirmed dead. One echoed loudest: Abdullah Wedigo, the boy's father. No grave, no goodbye, just whispers in sand. The court visibly shook, but Traore wasn't done. A journalist slipped him a folder during recess. Inside, a torn, dirt-smudged letter written in shaky French, dated 3 days before Abdullah's deportation. "To my son, if I don't return, know this. I was not just a translator. I was your father. I served to protect you. I believe their promise. But if I disappear, find a man I showed you on TV. He's not perfect, but he will speak for you when I can't. Your Papa, Abdullah." Traore took a moment. He blinked slowly, then re-entered the courtroom, letter in hand, photo in his pocket. He stepped forward and placed a letter on the bench. "I was asked today why this matters to me." He began, voice low, "Because that child could have been me. I was born under falling bombs. I was once hungry. I was once voiceless." His voice trembled, but it did not break. "And now that I have a voice, I will not use it for silence." The courtroom stood. Even the hardest judge did not object. The gavel never dropped, because the truth in that room didn't need permission. As Traore stepped outside for air, an elderly woman met him. Her hands shook, her eyes weary. She held out a folded photograph. "My grandson," she said. "Idris, 15. They said he was too old to stay." In the photo, a smiling teen stood beside a U.S. Marine truck, waving. "He served them tea every morning," she said through tears. "He loved those men. But when they left, he was deported to a country he didn't know." Traore bent down, took her hand. "Where's he now?" Her eyes dropped. "They said he was shot, crossing the desert. They say it was an accident." A silence deeper than grief followed, one that held the weight of betrayal. Traore returned to court, now carrying her sorrow with his own. He wasn't just representing Burkina Faso anymore. He carried every discarded child, every silent refugee, every family broken by broken systems. And still, the world did not listen loudly enough. So he raised the volume. That night, during a surprise live broadcast, the U.S. ambassador to West Africa appeared beside him. "Captain Traore," he said with visible remorse, "when we signed those defense pacts, we made promises. We failed to keep them. We failed you." Traore remained silent for a moment, then finally replied, "An apology cannot stitch a broken home. It cannot bring back the dead. But it is a start." The ambassador then handed him a new file. Inside are the names of 47 deported men who served alongside our soldiers. Some are missing. Some may still be alive. The world gasped. Could some of them still be found? Traore didn't hesitate. "I'm going to find them," he said. That night, #TraoreRises trended again, but not as a president, not as a commander, as a brother, a witness, a man unwilling to let injustice fade quietly. 3 days later, an anonymous satellite message arrived, just 14 seconds long. "Captain, if you get this, my name is Idris. I'm alive. We're hiding. They know we helped. They're hunting us." It was real. The voice matched the boy in the photo. The Supreme Court paused. The UN confirmed a possible location, a scorched village near the Mali-Algeria border. But by the time help arrived, it was gone, burned, bodies found, none identified as Idris. In court, Traore played the audio. "Do these men still not matter?" he asked. The silence said everything. In Burkina Faso, children painted murals of Idris. A caption read, "He served peace. Peace betrayed him." No one knew if the boy was still alive. But one thing was certain. Captain Ibrahim Traore would not stop. Not until every voice silenced by fear was heard by the world. The Supreme Court reconvened, but the gravity in the air had changed forever. The room was breathless. Captain Ibrahim Traore stood again. His assistant quietly handed him something, a crayon drawing. He held it high for the court to see. A stick-figured child stood beside a tall man in uniform. On the soldier's chest, the Burkina Faso flag. But the child's face was blank, just a scribble where the mouth should be. This was drawn by a boy in Niger. Traore said softly, "His father was deported. His mother hasn't spoken since. And the boy, he says he doesn't remember how to smile." The courtroom froze. "I'm not here for politics," he continued. "I'm here for silence. For mothers still clutching toothbrushes that belonged to sons who never came home. For people whose grief was never important enough for your headlines." A single tear slipped down a law clerk's cheek. "This isn't about law anymore," Traore whispered. "This is about what's left when law forgets humanity." And for the first time since the hearings began, a Supreme Court justice bowed her head and wept. That evening, a leak shook the world. A private contractor, linked to the deportation operations, issued a veiled threat. If Traore keeps speaking, will release that hell footage. It'll ruin him. Speculation exploded online. Commentators urged him to back off. Others said he was just posturing. But Traore didn't blink. The next morning at a public forum, he walked on stage holding a USB stick. "I know what's on this," he said into the camera. "I'll show it myself." Gasps. He plugged it in. The room darkened. The footage rolled. It didn't show war crimes. It showed compassion. Traore carrying an injured child from rubble, sharing rations with displaced families, tending wounds at a refugee camp. The crowd stood. Applause grew from a whisper into thunder. "I have no secrets," he said, "only scars. And I wear them for my people." The threat had failed. But the truth? It ignited a global storm. Soon after, the UN delivered a confidential document to his legal team, a list of 400 names. People deported under emergency protocols in the last 5 years. Most had served alongside Western troops. Many had simply disappeared. It was called the Ghost List. At the next hearing, Traore read the names aloud, voice breaking. One name stopped him, Soli Maindio, a young soldier he had personally trained. A reporter shouted, "Why didn't anyone speak up before?" Traore looked directly into the lens. Because the survivors carry guilt, and the lost carries silence. Today we break both. Suddenly, a woman cried out in the courtroom. She ran forward sobbing. "My brother, you said his name. You said his name." The guards didn't stop her. Traore didn't stop her. He embraced her gently. That moment, it went viral in 27 minutes. Families around the world scrambled to find the Ghost List, praying, searching, aching for just one name they'd recognize. This was no longer about courtrooms. It was about reunion. It was about redemption. After 3 weeks of emotional testimony, leaked files, and unstoppable public outrage, the U.S. Supreme Court reconvened. Everyone expected the usual, a vague judgment polished for media spin. But then, Justice Rivera stood, the oldest on the bench, visibly trembling. "We failed them," she said softly. "Not just the migrants, but humanity itself. While we debated policies, children were growing up without parents. War survivors were buried in silence." She turned to Traore. "You didn't bring us facts. You brought us truth. And you reminded us what justice is supposed to feel like." Then the court announced its decision. The block was overturned. An emergency federal investigation was launched into deportations that had already occurred. The chamber gasped. Shock, relief, disbelief. But Traore didn't celebrate. He reached into a leather satchel and placed something on the table. A child's worn shoe. "This is not a victory," he said. "This is a beginning, and we cannot stop here." Justice had finally become more than ink on paper. It had become a reckoning. 2 weeks later, Captain Traore hosted a summit, but not in New York, not in Geneva. In Ouagadougou, he didn't invite politicians. He invited families. Thousands came. From Syria, from Haiti, from Colombia, from Sudan. They brought photos, scrapbooks, toothbrushes, letters never answered. In a quiet hall, Traore had built something sacred, a memorial wall, a digital screen scrolling every name from the Ghost List. People screamed when names appeared. Others collapsed. Some just stood, silent and still. Then it happened. A mother from El Salvador pointed at the screen. "That's my son." A few moments later, a boy stepped out from a side door. He'd been found in Ghana a month ago. Alone, the mother ran. He ran. And the room, it broke open with tears. Hope was real. Even one reunion made it so. Trey stood in the back, arms crossed, eyes closed. He wasn't just making speeches now. He had become something else, a bridge between pain and healing. A BBC anchor, stunned, asked him live, "Why? Why do this? You had nothing to gain." Traore looked into the lens. His voice was low, thick with emotion, because when I was a boy, I saw my neighbor disappear. I heard his mother scream. I never forgot that silence. That boy grew up. He became a soldier. The camera zoomed in. His eyes glistened. I didn't come to America to argue laws. I came to hold up a mirror and remind the powerful what the forgotten look like. The video hit 98 million views in 2 days. A global movement began. Hashtag Name Them All trended in 74 countries. Families found one another. Lost children were discovered. Communities began to heal. And Captain Traore? He quietly returned home. No interviews. No parades. But his face appeared on murals in Bogota, Bamako, Beirut. Children painted his words across schoolyard walls. We do not deport pain. We carry it. We heal it. If this story moved you, if it made you cry, made you believe again, or reminded you what real leadership feels like, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and most importantly, leave one name in the comments, a name you'll never forget, a name someone else needs to read. Let's build a wall of remembrance together, because when we speak their names, they are never truly gone.